Okay, so here's my review of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Now it's probably later than a lot of other reviews, basically because it was released several weeks, well, 2 or 3 weeks later than in England than it was in the US, and it took me a while to get around to seeing it. But anyway, my thoughts on the film: I absolutely loved it. It was smart, funny, had me in stitches all the way through, especially the lesbian ex. Really good geeky references, very nerdgasmic, and I just loved it. I loved so unique, such a sense of humour. Now, I'm going to state first that before I saw the film, I read all the comic volumes. Now, I'm a late jumper on. I only read the comic volumes because I started hearing about the film. And I'm always torn about this sort of thing. On the one hand, I think I should read the original source material before its film adaptation comes out, just so I have a good understanding of the story. On the other hand, that would stop me from judging the film on its own merits, and I would constantly be comparing it to the original source material, which I don't think you can really do for film adaptations. You have to accept that things are going to be different when they transfer to a different medium. And you're going to have to accept things are going to get cut out, things are going to be made shorter, plot elements are going to change, just to fit into that medium. And you should judge it whether it stands on its own as a film, and not how it compares to the original source. Saying that, I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I think both as its own film, it's really good. As an adaptation, it's fantastic as far as adaptations go. It doesn't change it too much. It keeps everything that it needs to in the film, but it does compress it down a lot. Removes several subplots. Just makes things a bit neater and tidier. What can you say about it? Again, it's definitely a nerd film. Very 90s. Arcades, rock music. It does seem to be a very 90s styled film. That's not to say it's bad. I mean, I think it's really good. I love the 90s. What else can I say about it? The acting was very good, very solid. Not sure I completely bought the over-the-top styles of the girl playing Knives Chow, but she was going in their own stalkery, obsessed teen way. Well, I'm really not sure what else I can say. I mean, I loved it, had me in stitches, I already said that, and I'm rambling to myself, way. Fight scenes were choreographed beautifully. I loved the way it flowed. One big trouble I always find with films with big fight scenes, they can be far too choppy and, keep close up on the hits, which actually kind of makes it confusing. This kept it nice and open and was really fluid. It was like watching a ballet. Again, especially going back to the fight scene with the lesbian, I love the puppeteer fighting. I mean, I won't give that too much away, but once you see the film you'll know what I mean. So it's just very clever. There's always little Easter eggs to look out for, like there's very much a theme of number. Scott Pilgrim is always associated with the number 0, and you see it on his shirts, in his items, just in his day-to-day life, as well as you'll see the exes having corresponding numbers. Like the most obvious one I thought was the third boyfriend having a big 3 on his chest, whereas Scott fighting him had a big 0 written on his. But it's also more subtle, like the second X had 2 X's as a belt buckle, that sort of thing. Loved the fact that they didn't neuter Wallace on this. Trouble in movies, especially romancing movies, which it is kind of, is that they often tend, if they have a gay character, they neuter them and make them eunuchs, just sexless supporting best friends that are meant to be campy and witty. I mean, Wallace is still quite witty, but he's also really bitchy, which I like. And he gets quite a lot of action throughout the film. More than most of the straight characters, which is unusual. I just love the whole concept of this film. It can't really be put into a genre. And again, also the comic books. I mean, you could say it's about fight scenes and, you know, being a video game parody. But what it's about is a young man who's not completely grown up. And it's about him learning to deal with the emotional hardships of adult relationships. I mean, he starts off the film dating Knives Chow basically because it's a simple high school relationship. There's no real physical, it's all sweet, very PG-13 Bambi. And that's what he likes about it, and that he can control the pace of it. Of course, with Ramona and her exes, it's having to learn to deal with baggage, and the exes sort of not only represent Ramona's baggage, but his own. Which is really good about him maturing. The whole thing is about people maturing and changing and trying to change. I mean, it's Ramona sees herself as a bad person for what she's done to her previous exes, and it's about her trying to run away from that rather than actually trying to stay and change and fight for it. It's also Knives Chow. I loved her character in this and the comics. In the comics more, because in them it was about her becoming adulthood. She was going on a similar journey to Scott Pilgrim, where she had to learn to grow up and to handle adult relationships before her time. And I like how Scott Pilgrim isn't whiter than white. He is a douchebag, and he admits he's a douchebag. I mean, the whole plot of the nigger Scott in the comic books, which they drastically changed, but made a really good gag out of just... And I think it was a gag specifically aimed at the fanboys. What else? I mean, cinematography, choreography, brilliant. Themes, fantastic. And it really is disappointing that this hasn't done better at the box office. And I do think that is because it hasn't been marketed properly, because it doesn't have a set genre. It's something that both, you know, it's got the chick flicky elements, but it's also got the action elements and the comedy elements, which makes it a perfect date movie. It's just, it hasn't really been advertised as that. I mean, what do you advertise it as? Do you know, a fight film, a comedy, a chick flick? You know, it's... How would you advertise this? And also, audiences don't like to take a chance on something. The big thing about cinema is, and they spend so much in advertising trying to hype it up, because that's the only way it's worth going to the movies nowadays, if you can be assured of a good experience, which is why cinemas are failing nowadays. And it costs, I mean, this cost me £10 a ticket, which is roughly $15 in American money for those viewers out there. And again, another £5 minimum for the snacks. I mean, with my partners included, that came to £10 again. So, you know, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure it's going to be a film you're absolutely going to love. Which is the trouble with cinema, but that's an entire rant on its own in my opinion. My partner liked it, but his thoughts was it wasn't as good as it was hyped up to be. Now that's partially my fault for ranting about it. And I can see that. I mean, it has got rave reviews everywhere. And of course the thing with rave reviews is everyone only hears the good stuff, so it's always going to be a bit of a letdown. But he enjoyed himself, he found it funny. No. And if you can, get all of your friends to go see it. This film needs to be supported so more like it will come out. More films that are different, independent, daring, and just enjoyable. I mean, I have no doubt this will become a classic on DVD or video. You know, because a lot of classics didn't do well at the cinema. But, I mean, time will tell. No, it's a good film. I'd give it 4 3/4 out of 5. Just because there were some bits I wish they would have kept in. Scott's battle with the nigger Scott. was another bit I was going to keep in. Oh, Chow's dad. That would be a good one. And just more of Envy Adams. She played a bigger part in the comics, which I wish she did in here. But anyway, apart from that, like I said, fantastic film. Go see it. Please, please do. Alright. See you later.